White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked to leave a Virginia restaurant Friday. The co-owner of the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, Stephanie Wilkinson, told the Washington Post her decision to ask Sanders to leave was based on the concerns of several employees. Wilkinson expressed no regret and said she felt justified in her action because Sanders is a public official, not a regular customer. Sanders confirmed the incident in a tweet on Saturday, writing she was asked to leave because of her association with President Trump. She also wrote, "Her actions say far more about her than about me. I always do my best to treat people, including those I disagree with, respectfully, and will continue to do so." Sanders is just the latest administration official to be received poorly in a public setting.
And family separation! If kids don't eat in peace, you don't eat in peace!
Protesters confronted Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen at a Mexican restaurant in Washington last week over the Trump administration's family separation policy. And advisor Stephen Miller faced his own protester just days before when another customer called him a fascist. CBSN political contributor Michael Graham joins me now from Boston. He's a Boston Herald columnist and politics editor for nhjournal.com. He has a piece for cbsnews.com due out Monday morning about this. All right, Michael, a comparison has been made between this and the Christian baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. The idea being that the owner of the Red Hen was acting out of principle. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, it's the comparison that the owner, Stephanie Wilkinson, invited when she said explicitly, sometimes you have to make uncomfortable actions and decisions to uphold your morals. And she said that she felt like this is a moment where, quote, people have to live their convictions. So when you say, out of moral purposes and convictions, I'm refusing to serve you, it's a comparison that's very hard to miss. And, you know, my Twitter feed over the weekend exploded with this story hit. You could practically hear necks snapping from the double take conservatives were taking because we just spent basically a year and a half of having people yell, you can't make those decisions. You must serve people. You're full of hate if you allow your morals to define, who you will serve and what actions you'll take in a place of public accommodation. And here you have a woman in the Trump administration being invited to leave because serving her would violate the owner's morals. And wow, I mean, what else can you say as a conservative but wow?
So it feels like hypocrisy on the part of liberals then to you.
Well, not just to me. I mean, this is widely from, I was talking to some folks who are at different websites like Red State and Town Hall, my fellow colleagues at the Boston Herald, and they were all just saying if you were crafting a laboratory experiment to show what they believe is the double standard for the right and the left, this would be it. And I think that it's a really good way for people who don't understand why so many evangelical Christians, like my parents, for example, down in South Carolina, who normally would say, oh, Donald Trump, look at his character, look at his behavior, look at his background, a porn star is involved. How could they possibly support a Donald Trump? It's because that they believe that this is the world that they live in. That if they try to bring their values to the public sphere, that they are denounced. They're called haters and bigots. They're yelled at restaurants. We've had circumstances where people wearing their red MAGA hats were invited to leave bars in places like New York. We had a cell phone repairman in New Hampshire a few weeks ago who announced he would not take any Republican customers. And you look at that and you go, that's so egregious, and it's so counter to the message that people on the left have been giving, which is you should be tolerant and inclusive. And it looks a lot like you should be intolerant and inclusive of me and agree with me. And if you don't, well, we're going to throw you out.
Some people might say, though, Michael, is this really about Republicans versus Democrats, or is this more specifically about President Trump?
I think that's a very good question. And it's interesting. Some people on the left have said when you have a president like President Trump who has lowered the level of discourse, who's made it so coarse, who's called out people he doesn't agree with, who insults people who attend rallies like he just did the other night, commenting on someone's looks as they were being removed from his rally, that he's entered a new arena. But for many people on the right, they feel like that this is the world that they've been living in for years, that it didn't start with Trump. I remember during the Tea Party moment, having people on the left side of the aisle call Tea Partiers terrorists, as one congressman did, saying that they were, violent and they were, anti our values and they were dangerous. And these Tea Partiers were basically, my mom. I mean, they were just like these local neighborhood people organizing for something they believed in, and they were insulted. It wasn't a political debate. In other words, it wasn't, well, we just don't agree with your take on Obamacare. It was, why are you protesting? Your motives are suspect. The public arena isn't open to you. And for them, Sarah Sanders is a stand-in for how they believe they've been treated by the opposition in politics, and also, to be fair, by the mainstream media now for years.
The fact is there are protests throughout our history where people have spoken up and decided that there comes a point where they feel they can no longer sort of sit back. But I wonder if you think, despite the constitutional right to protest, that we've entered sort of this new realm where you're seeing now Trump administration officials being confronted in these various settings. It feels new.
It feels different. There was this time, it's hard for people to believe now, when politics was just politics, and you would so you would have friends that you disagreed with, and you'd, you're crazy, Republicans are great, Democrats are great. And then you'd go, have dinner, go to a barbecue. But we're living in silos of media content. People watch their own cable shows and get their own news. We're living in silos of communities often. When you look at how red communities are and how blue communities are. And so sometimes it's hard we seem to have decided we're just going to fire our rhetorical missiles from these silos. But I'm not going to let people on the left off for this, because if you talk to conservatives, particularly social conservatives, they will tell you two things. They realize that they've lost a lot of the cultural arguments, particularly on the issue of same-sex marriage. And so what they're asking for now is the same level of tolerance that for 20 years people in the LGBT communities, they said, hey, we're not asking you to agree with us. We're just asking you to give us our space, give us our rights, and let us live our lives as we choose. Now the political fortunes have been flipped, and those same LGBT activists, many of them are saying, no, you must be shot down. If you're a pizza joint owner in Indiana and someone randomly asks if you would cater a gay wedding and you say no, you must be destroyed. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders, you can't be allowed in our restaurant. I can't serve you. The restaurant employees were bragging on the internet about chasing someone away, not because, she's a criminal or has been charged with a crime, but because of politics. And that I think it's bad for democracy. It's disturbing. But in particular, to my friends on the left, I would say this is really a violation of your stated belief in diversity and intolerance.
Michael, I know you're somebody who is quite familiar with talk radio on the right. And I wonder, as you watch all of this continue to unfold, our political discourse being such that it is now, do you see a bottom? Is there a bottom?
I want to believe so, but I've wanted to believe that repeatedly. I think, for example, a real sore spot for conservatives is the issue of the IRS treatment of the Tea Party groups. I mean, when you think about it in the abstract, a government agency going after people who are trying to organize politically, there's a lot of debate about, well, just how bad was it and blah, blah, blah. But that really was, I think, for a lot of people in the conservative community, a turning point where they went, oh, my gosh, my government is now my enemy. And I really was hoping that might kind of shake things up. But instead, on the right, they've doubled down. They've decided to go full Trump. They're just going to fight. Now the left, I thought someone had a very, John Podhoretz of Commentary Magazine, an interesting comment that Trump's superpower is that he gets other people to act like him. And if we're all, not to be mean-spirited to my Trump-loving friends, but if we're all going to go to the scream, yell, insult level, I don't know how we go forward. But I really do believe that it's important for people like myself who believe in individual liberty, who think, hey, you want to own a restaurant, you want to turn people away, you should have that right. But I'm still going to say, what a lousy jerk thing to do. Come on, it's just politics. We need to be joined by people on the left who are willing to do the same thing. And I was heartened on Face the Nation. Elijah Cummings, a good, solid liberal Democrat from Maryland, he said on Sunday that he thought that the restaurant should have served her. And David Axelrod, President Obama's former consultant, he said the same thing. We don't want to go to the red table versus blue table when you go out to eat at a restaurant.
All right, Michael Graham. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And Michael's piece will be available on CBSNews.com Monday morning. Michael, thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you.